Here in this age of globalization we live in, the West, and in particular the United States, flex huge soft power muscle. What with the US's social media giants, its clothing, its food, its drinks, its sports, its entertainment. But what happens when that soft power comes up against the might of a market of 1.4 billion consumers?
Yeah, we apologize. We love China. We love, playing there.
Stars of the Houston Rockets choose contrition after a lone tweet deleted but not fast enough by the Rockets' general manager. Daryl Morey's solidarity with Hong Kong's pro-democracy movement enough for Chinese sponsors to pull out, while players in the NBA issued full apologies. So what's worse, the tweet or the apologies? We'll ask about sports and politics, and if it's any consolation to the NBA, there are plenty of other apologists out there, and worse, say human rights activists. There's Google, Apple, Microsoft, all actively complying with Chinese censorship rules. That's on the mainland. What's next now, though, for Hong Kong? Just as the 4-month-old protest movement enters a hardened phase with emergency law coming into effect. Does the strong pushback by Beijing prove Xi Jinping's strength or weakness in the face of dissent? Today in the France 24 debate, we're looking at China and the NBA. Joining us, Dorian Malovic, Asia editor for French daily newspaper La Croix. Fresh off the plane from?
Yeah, just landed.
From?
Hong Kong.
From
yeah.
Hong Kong.
Yeah.
Thank you for being with
Been
us.
there 2 weeks now.
All right. Joining us as well, journalist Ya Chun Wang. Welcome back to the show.
Honored to be back.
And honored to welcome as well Joël Ruet, president of the Bridge Tank, which is a foreign think tank.
Well,
what's the Bridge Tank?
It's a think tank on emerging economies. It's an economic think tank.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you. As a pleasure as always. The France 24 debate on Facebook and Twitter. #F24debate. Now there's blowback and blowback against the blowback. After first expressing regret, the NBA's commissioner also stating the league's support for freedom of expression. As for Beijing, it's not mincing its words. Valerie de Kemp has more.
It's a dramatic escalation in the row between the Houston Rockets and China. China's CCTV channel said this Tuesday that it would not broadcast any NBA preseason games taking place in the country. This as the backlash continues over comments made by the team's general manager supporting pro-democracy protesters in Hong Kong. The fight has now turned into a diplomatic incident with China's foreign ministry reacting to the controversy.
I suggest you pay attention to the reaction and attitude of ordinary Chinese people on this matter. It is not feasible to carry out exchanges and cooperation with the Chinese side without understanding China's public opinion.
General Manager Daryl Morey has since apologized for his comments. Yet despite the growing backlash, NBA Commissioner Adam Silver is standing firm, speaking out in favor of freedom of expression.
The long-held values of the NBA are to support freedom of expression, and certainly freedom of expression by members of the NBA community. And in this case, Daryl Morey, as the general manager of the Houston Rockets, enjoys that right. There are consequences from that exercise of, in essence, his freedom of speech. And, we will have to live with those consequences.
Consequences that could cost the American Basketball League millions of dollars. 500 million people watched the NBA's last season in China. And according to recent estimates, the league's business in the country is worth more than $4 billion.
Yeah, there's the tweets and there's the timing of it all. Perhaps we should start there. Dorian Malovic, it's preseason time for the NBA.
Yeah.
And there are two teams, the Los Angeles Lakers and the Brooklyn Nets, who've gone. They're going to play a match Thursday in Shanghai, Saturday in Shenzhen. The match is no longer going to be broadcast on Chinese public television. How do you think the NBA is playing it? So with these latest
It's been a little bit awkward. I mean, the first reaction was, okay, like many other companies, foreign companies, they just kowtow to Beijing again, saying, oh, we apologize, we're sorry. We touched the The tension, I mean, the heart of the Chinese people and everything, like the official foreign minister official in Beijing. And then suddenly the NBA boss said, well, now after some senators and politicians in the States say we cannot sell our freedom of speech for money. So that's now the way how it is. But then what I think is that even if Tencent, doesn't stream, or CCTV doesn't stream, that doesn't broadcast the first two match, the Chinese are going to use VPN to watch it on other network because they are really fans, and it's a huge amount of money, of course. But then it's going to be like they can find ways to watch it.
This is a storm that's going to blow over, you think?
I think it won't last so long. I think it won't last very long. I mean, like many other things like that, like for other companies, after a few weeks, it's going to end and they can find a solution. I don't know what you think about that, but I think it's just...
Yeah, Chun Wong?
Personally, I think that the first blowback is probably pretty strong because the sponsor, they pulled out, the merchandise online, they're also pulled out from Taobao, Tmall, Li-Ning, like all these very, very big merchandise online retailers. So I think right now they're really getting the hit, but I do agree with Dorian in a way that, Air France, all of the European airlines, Coach, Versace, all of these big luxury brands, they have done similar things before.
Yes.
And if you do remember the Dolce & Gabbana incident back in the day, yes, the blowback was very strong the first month, but look at how they're doing now. Mm-hmm. They're doing just great. Yeah. So I won't compare them on the equal plane, but at the same time, I don't think this is going to last long.
What do you think of what the general manager of the Houston Rockets did? Where's the mistake? Is it publishing the tweet? Is it deleting the tweet? Is it apologizing?
I think it's a series of mistakes. Well, I wouldn't call it a mistake. It is his freedom to say what he wants. But at his position, I think he clearly saw the consequence coming. And if he were just an ordinary new junior player, his words won't weigh as much. But he is a general manager of Rocket that is earning millions of dollars from China, from the sponsor, from the game, and the timing with Hong Kong and also the preseason. I think the mistake that he made probably for the team is that he wasn't careful about the communication, his personal communication with the team, and therefore the team has to face this big flashback without any organized response. They didn't know what to do.
And we should just remind our viewers, the Houston Rockets are not just any team. It's the team that Yao Ming played for, China's breakout star, the big center there for so many seasons. Mm-hmm. Yao Ming, who so far has kept a low profile.
Yeah, he really did. And I am not sure.
Some people say he could even play mediator at some point.
I'm not really sure if he would say anything, to be honest.
No,
if you
he
look
won't
at
say anything. He's part of the structure of the party anyway. He's used as a front guy.
yes.
He won't say anything. But I can add something that this NBA thing, what are the tweet and the withdrawal and things, start to add an impact on the American public opinion. China is far away, Hong Kong is far away, and then Xinjiang is far away. But then suddenly, through NBA, which is very popular, of course, in America, a lot of Americans say, oh my God, that's the way the Chinese are doing. That they are exporting their self-censorship to us now, and we are not free to express what we think. I think that's a consequence of this NBA stuff.
All right, and so Joël Ruet, this is a good thing in a way, because it does make us talk about...
we were asking about...
touches ordinary people and gets them more interested in what's going on really in China?
You were asking about mistakes and apologies. It was one mistake leading to another. And apology game is slightly funny. Consider for a minute the Twitter account of the Central Committee...
Just interrupt you to welcome Paris Traffic could not keep her away. Rico Leong of the Paris-based Committee for Freedom in Hong Kong. Thank you for joining us. Joël Ruet.
No, consider just for a second the Twitter account of the Communist Party Central Committee, which doesn't exist, of course, but imagine this Twitter account putting some comments on the NBA, on some political bias of the NBA or whatever, or some wrong commercial choices of the NBA. The people would be surprised. The NBA would be surprised. The world would be surprised. They're out of their way, you know. So I agree that there's freedom of speech. There's freedom of speech in democracies at a personal level, in any society at a personal level, at your own risk. Now, when you convey the image, when you convey the structure you work for or you work with, and when you convey the weight of your organization to put your own views, I mean, you're slightly beyond your natural legitimacy, I would say. And then
so for instance, I work for France 24.
Yeah. No, you're a journalist. You're a journalist.
Yeah,
the job of a journalist.
If I tweet over the weekend about the performance of the French national rugby team, is that out of line? Because those aren't the views of my employer.
François, you're a journalist. The beauty of journalism is that you are the only people on this planet to be allowed to raise any question by using your profession. Many other people on this planet are allowed to ask any question, but not by using their profession, their title, and engaging the whole community of people. The NBA is...
So the GM of the Rockets was out of line.
But implicitly, when he did that, he was bringing with him into his comment the hundreds and thousands of people who work for the NBA, subscribe to the NBA. Do they agree? I don't know. I'm not sure.
But I think if I can add something, I mean, you have this example of NBA, but as a guy, okay, he's in charge of something very huge. But then there is the case in Hong Kong. Hong Kong guy working for BNP Paribas. He published on his Facebook page, like a normal citizen.
His personal Facebook page.
Personal Facebook page, like many Hong Kongers, something on Hong Kong, what's happening in Hong Kong. Suddenly, the mainland Chinese just focused on this Facebook page and started to, insult him and say it's not possible, you cannot do that. And then they targeted the BNP Paribas Bank. And then he had to resign. And that happened 2 weeks ago with Cathay Pacific Airlines, Hong Kong Airlines, with a woman also. She was fired because she put on her...
But the general manager of the Houston Rockets is not in Hong Kong. Was he? Do you agree with Joël that in this case, he as a representative of his organization, he should not have tweeted?
No, I think he can do that as a normal citizen. I mean, I don't know why.
A normal citizen, of course. Did he do that as a normal citizen? No.
But it is his personal account. I mean, he can write anything on that. But then at that specific moment, it's dangerous for anybody to write something on China. That's what's now putting on stage the NBA stuff.
Yeah, I would like to follow up on the point you have just mentioned. I think we all agree that freedom, there is always a line between freedoms. But if you have to draw the line to infringe on personal life, then I think it's too much infringement on one's freedom. So I would agree if you have personal views, personal to political sensitive views, when you are carrying out your professional duty that might not be professional, and that can be subject to judgment. But when we are talking about personal sphere, personal life, and social media, I think that's really subject to really.
But further to Joël's point, people put on their Twitter feeds they put personal disclaimers, views, my own, but still to a degree they are representing their organization.
I would agree that actually nowadays it's not easy for any business to be neutral, and that's exactly what China is trying to do. I think China is trying to rage this kind of soft battle on even spread into the business sphere.
And in the case of the NBA, are they winning?
It seems they are not willing to sacrifice some values that treasured by their own nationals, like by fellow Americans. And I think that's why it has become like a bit of embarrassment for NBA. But then I think they are trying to strike the balance.
I get what you both are saying. And I agree that we live in a day of blurred boundaries. Those blurred, not just in China, in the whole world, with the social networks, and but I think, and that has a good aspect, because this blurred geographies forces the good old organization to rethink their boundary and sometimes to extend their boundary. We have those limits, we have those debates. Sorry. on how to expand the limits of companies. Companies are not just there to make profit. They can do corporate social responsibility. They have commitment towards the planet, etc. We have that in the West. We have that in China. We have that in the global South. So we are in the middle of this debate. But the more you stick to this boundary, the more legitimate you are, and the less you take the risk to have to apologize after that. The fact that you need to apologize shows that you were beyond your limits, you know?
Yeah, the question you're broaching is that of whether or not corporations have souls. We saw Archbishop Desmond Tutu write a piece last week where he said it was corporate pressure that helped end apartheid. So, again, is he right, the general manager of the Houston Rockets, when he speaks out in favor of the pro-democracy movement in Hong Kong?
I think it's a useful debate. I think we live in a complex world, and any point that makes a company, a corporation think about its position, or a state think about its position, is the current trait we are in the humanity today. But whether it's just the impulsion of a tweet, just in the split of a second, or if it's a built exercise, is not the same.
Not the same. Ya-Chun Wang, just a word about the NBA, because we know that there have been in the U.S. problems with the NFL, with the issues of race and so forth. The NBA was kind of seen as the cool sports league in the sense that they were more open and everything. Is the image of the NBA going to be tarnished in all this?
Even though I'm not a sports expert, but I will also like to go back to NBA's history a little bit. Back in the 60s and the 70s, NBA in the US, there were black players who were extremely vocal about racism back in the day. And of course, at the time in the US, it wasn't looked favorably upon by media, by the government, but they went on anyway. Of course, I don't think they're comparable because one is about foreign policy, one's about domestic issues. But NBA did have such histories back in the day that people voiced their own personal opinion, and eventually it became the spirit of the NBA as a group.
And as Dorian was saying, it's become such a global brand.
Yes, exactly. And then I think now this issue that we're discussing is really the economic power against the soft democratic power that United States would like to export to the world. And it seems like now that they are, I won't say even, but it's a pretty tense situation right now between the two.
We're going to put that to the rest of the panel when we come back. Stay with us. You're watching the France 24 debate. Welcome back, or welcome if you're just joining us. It's the France 24 debate, and we're looking at Western soft power, U.S. soft power in this instance, versus the economic might of China. The case in point being that storm over a tweet that had been quickly deleted by the general manager of the Houston Rockets NBA franchise team. We're talking about it with Dorian Malovic, age editor for French daily newspaper La Croix. Welcome back as well to journalist Ya-Chun Wang. We're also in the company of Rico Leung, member of the Paris-based Committee for the Freedom of Hong Kong, and Joël Ruet of the Bridge Tank Forum and Think Tank. Welcome back to you as well. We were talking about the NBA, another U.S. cultural export that was hugely popular in China up to now, the television show South Park. That is until this week's episode.
No, it's good, kids. They're loving it.
Yeah, but I can't sell my soul like this. I want to get away from that farm, more than anything. But it's not worth living in a world where China controls my country's art.
什么？你竟然看不起我？
I don't care how many people you have. I've got something in me that just won't let me be a part of all this.
Yes, there's blowback on the mainland over this. South Park has now been censored in China, sparking a little bit of irony from its creators over Twitter. They're saying, like the NBA, we welcome the Chinese censors into our homes and into our hearts. We too love money more than freedom and democracy. She doesn't look like Winnie the Pooh at all. Tune in to our 300th episode this Wednesday. Long live the great Communist Party of China. May the autumn's sorghum harvest be bountiful. We good now, China? Of course, that Winnie the Pooh reference is because there have been on social media in China bans on Winnie the Pooh as a kind of euphemism because the president is said to look like him slightly. your thoughts on this? What will it do? Will it turn Chinese people off South Park, or will it?
Well, I think there is a huge distinction between how the NBA is placing themselves in the Chinese market and also the South Park. South Park isn't hugely popular in China, whereas NBA has millions of dollars and millions of investment sponsors. So in a way, I think the South Park producer, they really respond in a very humorous American way, and it definitely wins the Americans' heart. I am almost certain that their next episode is going to have the big boom in their domestic market, and it's good for them. But it is very much expected that they're going to respond this way in comparison to the NBA, who is sort of in a huge turmoil right now because they're thinking about millions of dollars. They're thinking about their future in the biggest market in the world, whether at South Park, they have a lot more leverage in terms of that.
All right. Yeah, Chun Wang, we were talking about, you in part one, you mentioned this, how there are other companies that have had problems. Last year it was The Gap, quickly apologizing and removing T-shirts whose maps omitted Taiwan. Apple has learned the lesson as well on its iOS mobile phone operating system. Your access to the Taiwan flag's emojis dependent on whether your device is in the mainland of China, in Hong Kong, or in the rest of the world. How do you feel as somebody who knows Taiwan well?
Feels like a stab in the heart, that's for sure. But in a way, I almost kind of see it as they're really playing a dirty game in a way. I don't think this is something that, if China wants to sell themselves as a country with big hearts, with big visions to come, this is really a dirty trick that they're playing. And also, in 2 days, it will be the Taiwanese national anniversary, and I heard that in Stockholm on Saturday, that the Chinese embassy, they told Sheraton Hotel not to host the Taiwanese national anniversary, and they did so.
Yes.
But they canceled the hosting?
Yes, they refused to host the Taiwanese consulate.
The example. That's what I said.
Exactly.
The tweet is another example, or the South Park is another example of many pressures that China is exercising all over the world on a lot of companies, and now specifically on Taiwan, which is the next target after Hong Kong. And that's I want to talk about Sheraton. Sheraton has a lot of hotels, many hotels in mainland. So on the airlines, Taiwan doesn't exist anymore for Air France, KLM, or American Airlines. It's Taipei. When you fly those companies, you don't go to Taiwan, you go to Taipei, because China put the pressure on the airlines not to mention Taiwan. So that's kind of really huge, wild pressure on a lot of companies all over the world.
And it's not just company. If I may say, it's everyone.
Individuals
OECD,
also.
OECD, exactly.
Yes, and
UN, everyone is doing the same thing.
Now, what's happening in Hong Kong shows a lot of things on Hong Kong, but it's beyond Hong Kong. It's a global. Suddenly, people realize that the real nature of the Chinese regime, for those who were not convinced of the nature of the Chinese regime.
Your thoughts on this, and also more, there are cases where there's self-censorship, but also what to say, for instance, when Microsoft puts curbs on the use of LinkedIn when it operates in China, or Google, which helps the Chinese with their Dragonfly surveillance system effectively.
Well, I think we as a think tank, we try to observe evolution and trends from a neutral point of view, and to put this neutrality beyond the obvious perceptions that we might have, as some of us are Westerners, some of us are not, etc., and to observe the new lines of contention in the country. What we observe is that there's no longer anymore an obvious space, a neutral space. Every space is a space of rivalry, be it the internet, be it the industry of IT beyond the internet, or even the emoticons and etc., or the brands. So we live in a world where you have a lot of contention like that. Why? We have the assumption that it's because some of the perceptions are changing. So we've observed what the global South thinks of that. To get back to Taiwan, what we've observed also is that many countries in Africa have shifted from Taiwan to, or Taipei, to Beijing, not for reasons, for economic reasons and etc., but because the argument that some boundaries are either the direct or indirect result of colonial times or post-colonial times is an argument that strikes no chord in the West, but strikes a huge chord in the global South. So I think we're only at the beginning of those confrontation and discussions, and we would need to go beyond the little details, this emoticon, that tweet,
well,
or
what
whatever.
Google and Microsoft are doing,
and to have a serious
what Google and
discussion.
Microsoft are doing, that's not details. That's like
No, I know, but
actively helping the surveillance state.
I agree. There's an accumulation of things, but because we're only at the eve of a serious discussion. The serious discussion of the 21st century, or at least the first mid of the 21st century, is how we really overcome the post-colonial world that we have, with pros and cons, with and sometimes ugly.
And the question that Yao Chung Wang put at the end of part one of our discussion: who's winning the day? Is it China's economic might, or is it the West's soft power?
Well, soft power was first of all invented by America. Europeans are reluctant about using the term of soft power. Europeans, when they could, when they had the might, they used hard power.
People love our channel because they want to hear about France, and they know.
I know
that's soft power. They go to the Louvre,
but they don't claim that. They don't claim that to be soft power. In France, we are reluctant to call it soft power.
I'm claiming it as soft power. I mean, it's culture, le Louvre, and everything. It's soft power. And you see, you remember when Notre Dame was in fire?
I know.
All over the world, it was everywhere.
Yes.
Why?
Yes.
This is soft power.
It's hard. It's not necessarily power.
Amazonia was burning.
The concepts, concepts are never for granted. Is it soft? Is it power?
Yeah, whatever.
Europeans talk about culture. Americans talk about soft power. Chinese talk about something else.
What is China talking about, by the way? Because there is no soft power in China.
They're talking about civilization.
Well,
whether we like it or not, it's a fact. The different parts of the world don't speak the same language, and we're just realizing this today. Of course, this brings frictions and tensions, and that's irrespective of the regimes, of the systems, or of the society. There's a need to reopen the concepts we thought to be, we took for granted.
Most people, they don't fly in a plane. They don't pay attention to whether or not Taiwan is on the map or it's called Taipei, do they?
Me, I do pay attention when I try to check on airline. I do see that there are changes, and I have many Taiwan friends. And on this recent issue of what's happening in Hong Kong, we feel truly very much Taiwan and Hong Kong are really on the same fate. So or on the same unity of counteracting the same force or same threat that we are facing. So back to the soft power thing, I think it's no matter you call it culture or soft power. I think now it's in the era that different powers, including the rising Chinese power or the United States, the established power, they are using this kind of soft power or culture, whatever you call, to guard their values. But whether China is able but I would say that you mentioned the African countries. They are trying to do business with China in order to counteract the post-colonialism. But that's how we see China is taking this chance to export its own kind of soft power through this kind of economic collaboration.
Yeah, and there's aspects that we all embrace in the West of Chinese civilization that we too like to eat, like the cuisine, and and are discovering the culture more and more. There is this issue still about how much pressure is being brought to, well, keep the liberal order that we've known up to now in the West the way it is. Donald Trump himself, who's going to be meeting on Thursday with Chinese counterparts to talk about trade, he's been quiet when it comes to Hong Kong. His administration, though, has been more vocal. In a separate story, we learned on Monday 28 Chinese entities, including 8 companies working on artificial intelligence, have been added to a U.S. blacklist over the crackdown on Uyghur Muslims in the western Xinjiang province. And I got to ask you, Doran Malovic, is that about defending human rights, or is this part of that grand bargain over trade?
I think it's small gestures. Actually, it's not a huge pressure. I mean, it's really symbolic. I think the 28 entities, it might be important as such, but you have thousands. You have thousands, and you have the banks, and you have other big companies all over the world, Chinese companies. So it's just like that make me remember about some companies, from North Korea. I mean, it was very symbolic. I mean, you can always go around those sanctions. I mean, it's not so important. I mean,
we're running short on time, and since you are just back from Hong Kong, let's talk about what's going on there. Each new week seems to somehow raise the stakes in a 4-month standoff. Police say the number of arrests for defying a new face mask ban has reached 77. Colonial-era emergency laws went into effect Saturday. The protests continue unabated. The territory's chief executive says it takes time for measures there to work, and if they don't, well, there's always the threat of intervention from the mainland.
At this point in time, I still strongly feel that we should find the solutions ourselves. That is also the position of the central government, that Hong Kong should tackle the problem on her own. Okay? But if the situation becomes so bad, then no options could be ruled out if we want Hong Kong to at least to have another chance.
No options can be ruled out. In other words, perhaps intervention from the mainland.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I'm just back from there for 2 weeks, and now what I realized, I mean, talking with dozens of people and marching every day, evening, MTR closed, shopping malls, shops, banks, and the violence on both sides. I mean, it started now 4 months ago. It started with this anti-extradition bill. It was really anger from the Hong Kongese, right? Anger. And then there were 2 million and 1 million demonstration people in June. And then in July, August, this anger just went as a rage against the police brutality. I remember last time I talked about that. And it's really a reality. We don't see much on the screen in Europe, actually. And this rage is now becoming hatred against this police. Really, because we don't see the brutality. Every day you have people arrested. Yesterday you had a couple with a kid arrested in the night by the police. A pregnant woman was arrested and she's now in hospital guarded by the police. And every day you have that kind of violence and there is immunity. I mean, they can do whatever they want. And the way Carrie Lam is speaking, said, we have to solve the problem. She's not talking about the problem the demonstrators are talking. She's talking about problem of demonstrations. So the only way for her to quell the demonstration is more and more repression. And the Hong Kongers are really answering. It was Hong Kong courage. Now it's Hong Kong resist. Hong Kong go. We have to answer. So it's becoming more and more violent.
Citizens of Hong Kong are pragmatic, though. We saw with the umbrella movement that after a while they had to get back to work.
I mean, the Hong Kongers of 2014 are not the Hong Kongers of 2019. I mean, I don't know what you think about it. It's totally different. I mean, in June, it was already some kind of joy. It started like a dream. We can do something about this law of extradition. And then you have 6 demands now. It's not only one demand, like in June.
Because it had been 5, now it's become 6.
It's 6 because they ask for the dissolution of the police force.
Right.
Because it's now just unbearable
Honestly
for them.
speaking, Rico Leung, do you really expect Beijing to acquiesce on all 6 demands? What are you actually hoping for, expecting?
So I think it's all related to what we have discussed this evening. It's about Hong Kong is now actually we are fighting to guard our own freedom, fundamental human rights, but we are also at the front line of this expansion of Chinese authoritarian rule. So I think we have to fight on no matter how much possibility or that the Communist Party would really agree on these demands of us. And
is there a way that it can de-escalate, that there can be some kind of a real dialogue established between Hong Kongers and Beijing?
I'm sure many Hong Kong people, they also want peace and stability. They also want to go home and rest. No one would like to protest every weekend. It is very exhausting for the whole population, no matter the protesters or even the police side or the pro-government side. But I think the problem is the government never respond to any of our requests, except the withdrawal of the bill, which came too late. And so that's and now they are trying to enact the emergency law, bypassing the whole legislative process, which is a serious blow to the rule of law and judicial independence of Hong Kong, which is something Hong Kong stands firm very much with, and which is the core value of Hong Kong. So I think there is not much choice for the Hong Kong people right now.
Hong Kong's clout has diminished, obviously, since the British handed it over. Nonetheless, we see the numbers. Foreign investors prefer doing their IPOs there rather than in Shanghai. So, Joël Ruet, at this point in time, what future for Hong Kong?
Well, I think what will be key is the role of the police. I think this sixth demand is very important to analyze, because in every country, remember the French sociologist Pierre Bourdieu labeled the police as the legal violence. In Hong Kong had been a peaceful territory, so the police was not trained, was undertrained to violence. They were not equipped to handle that. Therefore, the reactions that got triggered by initial movements, etc., in a sense kind of spilled over. And somehow the police is very central to the issue today, not just the global politics. So it might be also very central into the solution. Back to your question on investments. Well, what you should not underestimate, we should not underestimate also, is that, frankly speaking, the economic model of Hong Kong had gone down over the years. There was
still the world's third financial center.
Well, yeah, but it's mostly used by Chinese companies for refinancing the Chinese mainland. You don't see many new technologies being developed. You don't see many new companies coming to develop their Pan-Asian or Pacific area. Why? Because the leadership had failed to propose something that would go into the future. You still have till today a kind of oligarchy of rich people who control, who have kind of compromised with the system, which is maybe good for stability, but not good for giving new prospects for. So the Hong Kong model at the heart, even before the protest, was at risk.
Ya-Chun Wang, what's next for Hong Kong?
I think my debaters here, they have summarized it very well. First of all, nobody knows really what is going to happen in Hong Kong. A lot of people, they set October 1st as sort of a deadline, but then as we saw, except for the escalation of violence by using real bullets, things has been escalating and things has been gotten worse. The police brutality, the demands are, they're adding more demands rather than actually getting a response of the demands. And I think with China's response to all of these so-called Western intervention in their eyes, they're getting more and more aggressive about it. They do not want any foreign support. They do not want any international voice to make the Hong Kong protester feel secure. So I think what Carrie Lam has said today, even though she is sort of just a mouthpiece of the government, but she also just a chess piece, what she said sort of just paved the way for more aggressive and not clear response from Beijing.
After 4 months, neither side blinking. Ya-Chun Wang, I want to thank you. I want to thank as well Joël Ruet, Dorian Malevich. I also want to thank Rico Leung for being with us. Stay with us. Media Watch is next. And we say hello to basketball fan James Creighton.
Well, the controversy consequent to it, fan, maybe. It's certainly interesting to observe all of this online, Francois. So it's tentacular. There's so many different aspects to the story. We'll start with the NBA, as you've been discussing, and various reactions to that. I presume you've been talking about the apology of sorts of Daryl Morey on social media. He sort of had to climb down, if you like. I did not intend my tweet to cause any offence to Rockets fans and friends of mine in China. This is after the Chinese consulate in Houston, and everybody came down on top of him and the Rockets like a ton of bricks. So that apology in itself drew a certain amount of reaction. I'm from mainland China, says one comment on that apology. I'm not that much brainwashed, and I want to thank you for your support for free speech and Hong Kong citizens. You and Rockets are the best. So some people coming out and saying that they had appreciated the original gesture. Others saying don't apologise for tweeting out about what is right. So how that has been managed or mismanaged is generating a lot of comment and debate, even from Chinese people watching in China. And then, of course, there was the whole issue of South Park, the famed American satirical show, which had mocked China and then subsequently got censored, and then it decided to mock China some more, I suppose, in the name of free speech, and also
and higher ratings, as
right, and certainly a nod as well to how the NBA had managed it. So an official apology to China, which was certainly very tongue-in-cheek. Now, reactions to all of that, I suppose, they being the two more notable incidents. One here from Ryan Ho Kilpatrick, who has been covering what's happening in Hong Kong for the LA Times. China has really overstepped this time, he says, thanks to their stunning pettiness with the NBA and South Park's banned in China episode. The issue of exported Chinese censorship has been catapulted to the national conversation in the US, and indeed not just in the US. We're talking about it in Paris as well, so it's become a global part of the debate. He went on to share some other sort of tongue-in-cheek comments. This one he translated from Mandarin. The CFA, that's the Chinese Football Association, hopes that FIFA will insult China like the NBA so they can righteously declare they refuse to appear in the World Cup in order to defend China's national unity. In other words, it might give them a handy excuse to not participate in the 2022 World Cup. That's a sort of...
Oh, of course, yes. You left out the best bit.
Well, China's national football team, famously awful. So, you know, this is all... I don't know, if it's meant to be... what would you say, a positive cultural diplomacy for China, it's sort of failing, as censorship will tend to do. Then, of course, there was the whole issue, Francois, of
yes.
This is, again, rather complex. Blizzard, which is basically, it's a video gaming online thing.
Yeah,
and
they do Call of Duty.
Right, exactly. So it's kind of like the virtual example of what we have just seen with NBA. And even there, in this virtual sort of gaming sector, when somebody spoke out, as this Hearthstone player, Blitzchung is his name on the game, he spoke out in an interview on Taiwanese online media, and subsequently got himself banned off the game for a year, and all of his earnings from that gaming enterprise suspended. So that, again, also got a huge amount of reaction online. Just some of the reactions you can see there. Thank you. This is one person thanking him for reiterating the Liberate Hong Kong message in front of Taiwanese gamers and all of the audience. And saying others just reiterating what I think should be self-evident. There's nothing wrong to support the fight for democracy. So again, all of these incidents have generated a huge amount of debate online, and you could argue that they're actually quite counterproductive in at least it's contributing to the polarizing. Then there was this image, which is, I suppose, a lesser-known image of the Tiananmen Square massacre, lesser known than the famous Tank Man image, that was shared on Reddit and then subsequently taken down of Reddit. And a lot of people were critical of that, and it ended up being restored afterwards. So there are many examples, Francois, of how different forms of media, forums and organizations outside of China are being pressured in one way, shape or form, and actually bowing to that pressure. But then that generates such an amount of debate around the issue that it's, I would argue, counterproductive from the point of view of
that there's certainly blowback. Many
diplomacy.
Thanks, James Creedon. I want to thank our panel once again. Thank you for being with us here in the France 24 debate.